The fog hangs low over the English Channel. The air smells of salt and iron. Inside a dim barracks, a man sits alone by the door, his face lit by a single lantern. Private William Carter, 24, of the 101st Airborne. He hasn't slept in 2 days. The invasion waits outside, breathing down his neck. The others laugh to hide the fear. They deal cards, share cigarettes, polish helmets already clean. But Carter only writes. His fingers tremble as he presses the pen to the page. My dearest Evelyn, it's quiet tonight. Too quiet. I can almost hear the sea breathing out there. The sergeant says we jump before dawn. I'm not afraid of falling. I'm afraid of forgetting what home feels like. He pauses. The ink pools at the edge of a word. Somewhere, a radio hums faintly, a British announcer murmuring coded phrases, meaningless to most. He listens anyway. It reminds him that the world still exists beyond this hangar. Sergeant Donovan walks past, mug of coffee in one hand, cigarette in the other. Letters again, Carter? Helps me think straight, Sarge. Donovan grins, half tired, half proud. Just don't write your will in it. Carter manages a smile. Not yet. Outside, the night glows red from distant fires along the coast. The sound of engines builds, transport planes warming up, thousands of them. Carter looks down at his letter again. They tell us we fight for freedom. Maybe that's true. But what keeps me moving isn't freedom. It's you. I picture your hair in the sunlight. I hear you humming in the kitchen. I hope when I come home, I'll still recognize your voice. He folds the page, slides it into an envelope already worn soft from his hands. He writes the address with care, Evelyn Harper, 327, Willow Street, Boston. Then he tucks it into the small chest pocket of his uniform, close to his heart, where he keeps everything that matters. Gear up. The voice of command slices through the air. Boots stomp, belts tighten, rifles clatter. Donovan claps his shoulder. Time to move. Carter nods, stands, slings his rifle, and steps into the night. The air outside is cold and sharp, like the first breath before a storm. Floodlights sweep across rows of paratroopers, faces ghostly in the glare. Engines roar. The sky hums with wings. They load into the planes, shoulder to shoulder. The smell of oil and sweat fills the air. Inside, red lamps cast everything in blood-colored light. Men whisper prayers. One hums a tune from home. Another kisses a small photograph before tucking it into his sleeve. Carter checks his chute, then his pocket. The letter is still there. Donovan leans close. When you hit the ground, don't look back. Carter nods. Wasn't planning to. The engines roar louder. The floor shakes beneath their boots. A voice crackles through the radio. Godspeed, boys. Make it count. Through the open hatch, darkness stretches forever. Below, the French coastline sleeps beneath the guns. Carter looks out. The ocean gleams like black glass. He closes his eyes and thinks of home. A porch swing, sunlight on her hair, the smell of bread cooling on the windowsill. The green light flashes. Go, go, go. He leaps. Wind tears at his face, his body spinning in weightless silence. The night explodes with tracer fire. Parachutes bloom like ghosts against the burning sky. Carter falls through chaos, flares, smoke, gunfire, and for a moment, everything slows. He feels the letter against his chest, warm through the fabric, as if it's keeping him alive. Then the ground rushes up. Impact. A jolt. Silence again. He rolls, gasping. Around him, the fields of Normandy burn. The air tastes of dirt and blood and cordite. Distant cries echo through the fog. Commands, prayers, screams. Carter crawls to cover, presses a hand to his pocket. The letter's still there. He takes it out, looks at it under the flicker of a dying flare. A bullet hole tears through the corner, just a graze, but enough to bleed the ink. The last words blur into a smudge. I'll see you soon. He smiles weakly. Guess not. He tucks it back in. Stands. Moves into the dark with his rifle ready. The war swallows him whole. Hours later, as dawn breaks, the field is silent again. Bodies lie scattered among torn parachutes. Wind rustles through the grass, carrying the faint smell of smoke and salt. A farmer finds the letter days later, caught on a broken fence post. He doesn't speak English, but he reads the name anyway. He folds it, gently, and places it beneath a stone. The narrator's voice returns, quiet as the wind. By the end of that day, more than 4,000 men were gone. Their letters, their voices, their love, scattered across a world they never saw again. But words have a way of surviving. They linger in pockets, in ruins, in the soil that remembers. A single envelope drifts across the field. The name Evelyn glows faintly in the sunlight. The camera pulls back. Hundreds of white papers caught in the morning wind, rising like souls, carried toward the sea. The wind screams across the steppe. It carries snow, ash, and whispers of the dead. The world here is white and gray, colorless, endless, merciless. Inside a frozen trench, a man hunches over a dim oil lamp. Gefreiter Franz Adler, 27 years old, of the German Ninth Army. His breath fogs in front of him, curling like smoke from a dying candle. His gloves are gone. 2 fingers on his left hand are black from frostbite. Still, he writes. A piece of ration paper, a pencil stub, a trembling hand. Mein liebe Clara, I do not know if this letter will ever reach you. The post stopped coming weeks ago. But if I stop writing, I fear I will stop being human. It is colder than I ever imagined. We burn the handles of our rifles to keep warm. The snow hides everything, even the dead. He pauses, flexing his stiff fingers. The sound of distant artillery echoes like thunder in another world. The oil lamp flickers. The trench shudders as a shell lands somewhere far away. Across from him, Otto, a young private with hollow eyes, lights a cigarette with shaking hands. Writing again. Franz nods. To Clara. It helps me remember her voice. Otto smirks weakly. You think she'll ever read it? Maybe, Franz says softly. Maybe God delivers letters the mail cannot. Outside, snow drifts down like ash. A soldier's body lies half buried by the trench wall, ice frozen over his face like glass. No one bothers to move him anymore. Franz looks at his letter again. I dream of home. I dream of our little garden, the smell of the apple tree in spring. I remember our son, his small hands clutching the wooden horse I made for him. Does he still have it? Does he ask where I am? He stops. The words blur. His eyes sting, but the tears freeze before they fall. He rubs his hands together, breathes warmth into them, and continues writing. Tell him I am proud of him. Tell him I fight because I must, not because I want to. Tell him that when he grows up, he must never mistake duty for hatred. A sudden explosion rattles the trench. Snow falls from the ceiling. The lamp flickers out. Darkness swallows everything. Otto curses under his breath. They're getting closer. Franz finds the matchbox, lights another flame. For a brief second, their faces glow orange, 2 ghosts clinging to a world that no longer wants them. The smoke curls upward, swallowed by the cold. He finishes his sentence quickly, his handwriting crooked and frantic. If I do not come home, tell our son that I loved him every day, even from this frozen hell. He folds the scrap, presses it to his chest for warmth. Outside, the storm howls louder. The voice of the narrator drifts in, distant, solemn, like wind through a graveyard. In January 1943, the German Ninth Army was encircled near Smolensk. Temperatures fell below -40 degrees. Men froze where they stood. They wrote until their hands stopped moving. Franz tucks the letter into the inside pocket of his coat, the same place where he keeps a photo of Clara and the boy. Then he stands, rifle in hand, and climbs out of the trench. The snow bites his skin instantly. He moves through the storm, each step heavy. Around him, shapes move, not men, not yet ghosts. The line between the two grows thinner every hour. Suddenly, a shell lands nearby. A flash, a roar, a rush of air. When the snow settles, Franz is gone. Silence returns. The only movement is a single scrap of paper drifting across the white ground, his letter. It tumbles over ice, caught in the wind, vanishing into the endless horizon. Cut to black. Then, a new image, springtime, years later. A Russian farmer walks through a thawing field. He finds a piece of paper pressed beneath the roots of a birch tree. The ink has faded, but the words still breathe faintly. Tell our son I am proud of him. The farmer cannot read German. He studies it for a moment, then folds it gently and places it in his coat pocket. The narrator returns, quiet and steady. For every soldier who wrote home, thousands never did. Some letters were lost to rivers, others to fire. Some were buried beneath snow for decades. But the words remained, waiting to be found by someone who would understand them, not with language, but with silence. Camera pans across a field of white. Snow melts into water, water into earth. Beneath it all, paper, ink, ghosts. Franz's last words echo softly, barely audible. Clara, I'm still here. The ocean stretches to eternity, blue, vast, and empty. Waves crash against steel hulls as the Imperial Japanese Navy prepares for battle. Aboard the aircraft carrier Akagi, the deck hums with mechanical rhythm. The screech of metal cables, the thunder of engines, the chants of men repeating ancient words of loyalty. Among them stands Petty Officer Hiroshi Takeda, 22 years old, dressed in a flight suit smelling of oil and salt. He gazes at the horizon, endless sky meeting endless sea. In his hand is a folded envelope, the edges soft and worn, sealed with trembling fingers. He opens it once more before the order comes. Okasan, if this reaches you, the wind has been kind. I will fly today with my brothers. They say the ocean will cradle us, that we will be remembered as spirits guarding the homeland. I wish I could see you once more. I still remember the way you looked at the sea, as if you knew it would take me someday. The paper flutters in the morning breeze. Hiroshi presses it to his lips, closes his eyes. He hears footsteps. Lieutenant Yamamoto, his flight commander, stops beside him. Takeda, he says, his tone firm but not unkind. Your mother will be proud. We fly for honor. Hiroshi nods. Yes, sir. But inside, the word honor feels heavy. Heavier than his parachute, heavier than the sky. A drum beats once. Then again. The rhythm echoes across the deck. One heartbeat for every soul about to rise and vanish. Yamamoto raises his voice. All aircraft ready. For the Emperor. The men shout together, voices raw, almost desperate. For the Emperor. The engines roar to life. Propellers slice the air, a storm of noise and fire. Hiroshi climbs into his plane, a Mitsubishi A6M0, sleek, deadly, painted with the red sun on its wings. He straps himself in. Beside the control stick, taped to the dashboard, is a small black and white photograph of his mother. He touches it with his gloved fingers. Forgive me, he whispers. The deck crew signals. Planes roll forward, one after another, rising into the morning sky. The air is thick with fuel and fear. The narrator's voice threads through the roar. In the summer of 1942, Japan's pilots believed they carried not only bombs but the soul of a nation. Many were told their sacrifice would bring eternal peace. Few truly believed it, but all obeyed. From above, the ocean looks calm, an illusion about to break. As Hiroshi's squadron reaches formation, the radio crackles with clipped Japanese commands. Then, silence. The attack begins. Black smoke erupts from the horizon as anti-aircraft fire claws at the sky. Explosions bloom across the sea like flowers of flame. Hiroshi grips the control stick tighter. His hands are steady, his heart pounding against the letter in his chest pocket. Okasan, he whispers, if I die today, I hope the wind will carry my love to you. Tracer rounds streak past his cockpit. One engine bursts into flame. The screams of the wounded mix with static on the radio. He looks left. Yamamoto's plane takes a direct hit. It spins, trailing smoke, disappearing into the clouds. Hiroshi flinches, shouts something no one hears. Then he's alone. The sky burns around him. His fuel gauge dips toward empty. The carrier below is gone. Only fire and sea remain. He opens the throttle one last time and turns toward the horizon. A final explosion shakes the heavens. The camera follows the plane as it descends, slower, slower, until it vanishes into the Pacific. The waves rise, swallow everything, and close again as if nothing ever happened. Silence. Days later, pieces of wreckage wash up on a small island hundreds of miles away. A fisherman finds a floating wooden box. Inside, scraps of paper, half-burned photographs, the remains of a uniform, and a letter sealed inside wax. He dries it in the sun, tries to read the faint Japanese characters. Do not cry for me. When you hear the wind move through the trees, that is me coming home. He doesn't know the language, but he understands the feeling. He folds the paper and buries it in the sand. The narrator's voice returns, calm, resonant, echoing over the sea. After the Battle of Midway, hundreds of Japanese letters drifted ashore on islands and coasts. Messages never sent, words never read. Some were found decades later, sealed inside the wrecks of planes and ships. They were not declarations of loyalty. They were the voices of sons and fathers whispering the same truth, that love survives even in war. Waves crash. The horizon glows gold under the setting sun. The wind rises, carrying faint whispers in Japanese. Laughter, farewells, prayers. The sea keeps their secrets. Rain falls softly on shattered stone. The monastery on the hill, once sacred, now broken, lies in ruin. Smoke curls through the arches where monks once prayed. Below, in the valley, a field hospital groans under the weight of war. Canvas tints ripple in the wind. The air smells of rain, blood, and antiseptic. Inside one of them, a woman moves from bed to bed. Lieutenant Margaret Ellis, 28 years old, British Army Nurse Corps. Her uniform is stained, her hands blistered, her eyes hollow with exhaustion. But she doesn't stop. The camera follows her, a lantern swaying in her hand, lighting faces that drift between life and death. The wounded call out for their mothers, their wives, their gods. Some whisper to people who are no longer there. Margaret kneels beside a young soldier whose bandages seep red. He clutches a small, crumpled paper in his hand. "Easy now," she murmurs. He tries to speak, but can't. He pushes the paper toward her instead. She opens it. The ink is blurred, the handwriting trembling. "To my darling Emma, the rain here never ends. If I don't come back, promise me you'll name the baby after your father. He was a good man. I hope to be one too." Her lips part slightly. She wants to promise him that Emma will read this, that he'll make it home. But his hand slips from hers. The candle flickers. The letter falls onto the sheet beside his still chest. She stares for a moment, then folds it neatly and places it beneath his pillow. Outside, thunder rolls over Cassino. The ground trembles with artillery. Margaret steps out into the rain, face turned upward, letting the water wash the blood from her hands. Her friend, Nurse Evelyn Moore, calls from behind her. "You'll catch cold, Maggie. Come inside." Margaret shakes her head. "Not yet." Her voice cracks as she adds quietly, "They still need me." Inside the tent, she opens a small tin box on her cot. Inside are dozens of letters, mud-stained, blood-stained, burned at the edges, each labeled with a name, each never sent. She keeps them because no one else will. Every night, after the chaos, she sits and reads one. Not aloud, but in silence, a ritual of remembrance. "Dearest mother, my love, forgive me. Tell our son I'm proud." The voices blend together. Different countries, same words. Different uniforms, same longing. Margaret presses one to her heart. "You'll be heard," she whispers. The camera pans slowly across the tent. Rows of cots. Rain tapping the canvas. Lanterns flickering. Outside, the faint strains of a soldier's harmonica float through the storm. The narrator's voice fades in. At Monte Cassino, thousands fell in the mud and rubble. Among them, hundreds of letters, unfinished, unsent, unread. Nurses gathered them, wrapped them in cloth, and carried them from one camp to another, believing that words should not die with the men who wrote them. Margaret moves to another cot. An older soldier, American, maybe 35, lies dying, his chest rising shallowly. He tries to speak. "Letter," he gasps. "Pocket." She reaches into his jacket, pulls out a folded paper. It's torn, smeared, but she can make out the first line. "To my little girl, Anna, happy birthday." Her eyes soften. "You can tell her yourself?" she says gently. He smiles faintly. "Maybe." Moments later, his breathing stops. Margaret closes his eyes. She places the letter with the others. Her hands tremble, but she doesn't cry. Not anymore. The night deepens. The rain stops. Only the wind remains, moving softly through the tents, as if whispering through the paper itself. She sits by the lamp and begins to write. Not to anyone, just to remember. "Tonight, I held the hands of men who spoke in a dozen tongues. They all said the same thing before they died. They spoke of home, of mothers, wives, sons. I have no home to write to, but maybe these letters are mine now." Her handwriting is neat, steady, almost holy. When she finishes, she folds the page and places it with the others in the tin box. The narrator's voice returns, quiet, reverent. In the chaos of war, she became the keeper of their words. The letters she carried would never be sent. But through her, they endured, a testament to what men still hoped for, even when the world gave them nothing left to hope. Indiana. Dawn creeps across the ruins of Cassino. Smoke rises like incense from the valley below. Margaret steps out of the tent. She looks up at the monastery's shattered walls, bathed in pale light, and whispers, "They're home now." The wind stirs the edges of her coat. Somewhere, the sound of a bell echoes faintly, distant, mournful, eternal. She turns and walks away, her box of letters pressed to her chest. The war is over. The guns are silent. But silence has its own weight. Heavy, suffocating, full of ghosts. The film opens on a train yard outside Paris, summer 1945. Rows of mailbags, stacked like sandbags, sit under the open sun. Dust, cobwebs, forgotten ink. A French clerk wipes sweat from his brow as he opens the first sack marked military post, undelivered. Inside, thousands of letters. Faded, torn, stamped with names of men who will never read another word. He pulls one out at random. The envelope bears a smudge of dried blood, a name almost gone. Private W. Carter, 101st Airborne. He doesn't know the name. He just stares at it for a moment, then places it gently into a new pile marked Return to Sender. The ink bleeds in the heat. Cut to a dim British postal office, months later. Stacks upon stacks of returned envelopes flood the floor, each one carrying someone's heart, trapped in paper. Women sort through them by candlelight, whispering to one another as if afraid to wake the dead. Voiceover. When the world stopped fighting, the letters began their long journey home. Millions of them, some reaching mothers who'd already buried their sons, wives who'd already remarried, children too young to remember the faces behind the handwriting. A knock on a door. An elderly woman opens it to find a postman, cap in hand. "Mrs. Harper?" he asks. She nods. He offers her an envelope, old and wrinkled, edges brown from time. Her hands shake as she reads the name. From Private William Carter. She presses the letter to her chest before she dares open it. Then, slowly, she unfolds the paper. The ink has faded, but the words still breathe. "My dearest Evelyn, it's quiet tonight. I'll see you soon." Her breath catches. Her fingers trace the smudge near the end, a bullet hole. She closes her eyes. The room tilts. Then she smiles, a small, trembling smile that carries both love and grief. She folds the letter, places it beside his photograph on the mantel. Her whisper is almost lost in the ticking of the clock. "You made it home, well, you finally did." The voiceover returns, soft, reflective. Across the world, letters long thought lost began to resurface. Some arrived 5, 10, even 20 years after they were written. They carried the voices of men frozen in time, young, hopeful, unbroken. The world they spoke to no longer existed, but the love they carried still did. In a small post-war apartment, Clara Adler sits at her kitchen table. A knock comes. A man from the Red Cross stands at the door, holding a weathered envelope. "It was found near Smolensk," he says softly. "We thought you should have it." Her hands tremble as she opens it. Inside, a letter written in faded German script. The words tilt and shiver across the page, but she knows the handwriting instantly. "Tell our son I am proud of him. Tell him I loved him every day, even from that frozen hell." Her breath breaks. She presses the page to her lips. Her son, now 6 years old, watches silently from the doorway. She looks at him, smiling through tears. "Your father wrote to you," she whispers. He takes the letter in his small hands, eyes wide, not yet understanding, but feeling. A fisherman walks the shore after a storm. Among the debris, he finds a small metal box washed up on the sand. Inside, a photograph of a young Japanese pilot and a folded sheet of paper sealed with wax. He wipes away the salt and begins to read. "Do not cry for me. When the wind touches your face, that is me returning home." He looks toward the sea. The wind brushes across the water, lifting the edges of the letter like wings. He bows his head, whispers, "Welcome home, soldier." The camera moves through time, across continents, post offices, attics, trunks, boxes of forgotten mail discovered decades later. Each letter found is a heartbeat revived. Each name read aloud is a soul remembered. The narrator's voice deepens, filled with quiet awe. Some letters were burned, others buried, many never opened. But every word carried a piece of the truth, that even in war, especially in war, people wrote to be remembered, to love, to remain human. These papers were their last resistance against oblivion. Final montage. Old hands unfold fragile envelopes. Children trace the ink with wonder. Museum shelves line up glass cases labeled letters from the war. You hear the faint sound of voices overlapping. English, German, Japanese, Italian, all reading fragments of their last messages. My love, forgive me. Tell our son, I'll see you soon. The words blur together into one chorus. Human, eternal. The final image, a letter floating in water, drifting slowly toward shore. It bumps against a rock, turns, and the sun catches the faded ink. For a brief moment, the paper glows. The narrator whispers. The mail that never arrived, finally did. Not in the hands of those it was written for, but in the hearts of those who still remember them. The tide carries it away again, gently, endlessly. A quiet museum hall bathed in afternoon light. Dust dances in the still air. The camera glides past rows of glass displays, faded uniforms, dented helmets, dog tags. And there, beneath the largest pane of glass, lies something far more fragile than steel, a collection of letters. They are yellowed, torn, burned at the edges. Some written in English, others in German, Japanese, Russian. Ink runs down the pages like veins. They are all titled the same way, not delivered. The sound of footsteps approaches. A young woman stops before the display, a history student, perhaps 20 years old. She reads the placard aloud under her breath, recovered from battlefields between 1940 and 1945. Found decades later in Europe and the Pacific. She leans closer. Her reflection merges with the ghosts behind the glass. A narrator's voice rises softly, reverent, slow. They say history is written by the victors, but sometimes it's whispered by the forgotten, those whose words never found their way home. The camera moves in tight. On one letter, you can still read the trembling script of William Carter. My dearest Evelyn, I'll see you soon. Next to it, Franz Adler's frozen note. Tell our son I am proud of him. Beside them, Hiroshi Takeda's final promise. When the wind touches your face, that is me returning home. And then, the small folded page written by Margaret Ellis, the nurse who kept them all. Maybe these letters are mine now. If no one remembers their names, I will. The voices return, softly, layered, as if carried by the wind itself. William's American accent. Franz's rough German whisper. Hiroshi's gentle Japanese tone. Margaret's quiet English prayer. One by one they speak. Carter, it's quiet tonight. Franz, it's cold here, Clara. Hiroshi, do not cry for me. Margaret, they all said the same thing before they died. They spoke of home. Their words blend, overlapping, until it becomes a soft hum, a hymn for the lost. Cut to archival footage. Old black and white film reels, soldiers laughing, writing letters on helmets, kissing envelopes before sending them off. Then explosions, smoke, silence. Back to the present. The young woman walks down the hall, notebook in hand. She stops beside a large wooden board where visitors can pin their own notes. It's filled with handwritten messages. For my grandfather, who never came home. For my great-uncle, whose letters we found in the attic. For the ones who never said goodbye. She pulls a small paper from her pocket, writes something, and pins it there. The camera zooms in. To those who loved even when the world was burning, we hear you. The narrator's voice returns, filled with quiet awe. More than 80 years have passed. The guns have rusted. The flags have faded. But the words remain. They cross generations like echoes through stone, carried by time itself. Cut to aerial shots. The beaches of Normandy. The frozen plains near Smolensk. The blue vastness of the Pacific. The ruins of Monte Cassino, now covered in green grass. Wind moves through the fields. Leaves rustle like paper. You can almost hear the faint scratching of pens, the soft murmur of names spoken only in memory. A letter appears on screen, handwritten in new ink. It's a modern one, dated today. It reads, To the soldiers who never came home. We found your words. We kept them safe. You are not forgotten. You are not silenced anymore. The camera pans upward. A beam of sunlight breaks through the clouds, falling across the letters in the museum case. The pages flutter slightly, as if breathing.